Other
979, where should the remaining Texas teams go? Speaking of that question, I have no idea where they're going to go, where they should go. I don't know. You hope for Power 5, but we don't know. Do you understand that back when the Southwest Conference was still alive, which 95 was their last year ever, then they died, became the Big 12, and others were scattered. Houston, which was added late, basically was considered a Power 5 at the time. It's not Power 5 was not the terminology, but Division I. TCU, SMU, Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor. Did I miss anybody? TCU, SMU, Houston, Rice. Those were 7 or 8 teams in the state of Texas.
And A&M was in the SEC.
A&M, that's 8.
Yeah.
Because the Southwest Conference also, Arkansas, of course, was a part of it as well. But think about this. There's now 2. If, in fact, nothing happens with TCU, Texas Tech, or Baylor, if, in fact, they don't stay involved in a Power 5 conference, and I'm not saying this to whine or complain, but is there a chance you could go from what was 7 or 8 Division I programs, and I know that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, things changed, to 2? And this is the football-hungry state?
I mean, right now it seems like one of the possibilities. I don't think that's it. I think, somebody's going to want to put their footprint in Texas. But we've got a call from Dean from the 407, which might be not from Orlando, but that's the Orlando area code. Dean, you're on SicEm365 Radio. Thanks for calling.
Good. I enjoy your program. I just found it this week online. Hey, I just wanted, I do want to tell all the fans of the schools, the Baylors, I'm a Missouri grad, and we went through the same thing 10 years ago before we got in the SEC, when all those schools were going to go to the Pac-10 and we were going to be left out. So I do feel so sorry for the teams that, are up in the area now. But I do find it ironic that Texas and Oklahoma 10 years ago, along with many other schools in the Big 12, refused to play Missouri, bashed us when we went to the SEC along with Texas A&M. And now those are the schools that are begging, and I use the word begging, now to join the SEC when we are actually asked to join, and they're now begging. If you can keep me online to hear the comment, that'd be great.
Hey, thanks for the call. I don't know about begging. I know you're saying that. I think there might have been some mutual interest here, and we just don't know who made the first phone call. But that point's been brought up, and you're right. The A&M got skewered because they were leaving, and there was some politics involved in that as well. And how could they do that? And they can't do that. And they've done it, and they were blasted by Texas fans, and they were. I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree, Dean. I agree with you too, because the narrative
but things change.
Yeah, things do change. But the narrative from Texas, from a lot of Texas fans, the Texas people, well, they'll never do anything without us. They're nothing without us. We're in their song. Now, okay.
Yeah,
it looks like you'll never do anything without them.
I mean, it's like most of the talk on social media. It's just a lot of talk and nothing really matters, So, like, all that stuff they said back then, it's like whatever. It's just wiped away because, hey, now they're in the group too. And no, but it does make them look a little bit foolish, have maybe a little bit of egg on their face, certainly. But I think that all they're doing is dreaming about dollar signs, and they don't really care if they look a little foolish so long as they get what they ultimately want. And that's why schools like that are always in the position they want to be in, is because they don't care if it's embarrassing or it's hypocritical or whatever. They're going to find a way to put themselves and themselves alone in the best position possible. And it just so happens that OU and Texas worked mano a mano on this. So, yeah, it does look a little funny, but, ultimately I think they do still get the last laugh in many ways because they're going to be right in the game with, the schools that they were, making fun of a few years ago. So, yeah, it's a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Hey, by the way, Dean, you, among many others, are the ones who discovered us this week because of the story. And speaking of that, Brent Zwerneman of the Houston Chronicle, who we had at the start of the show today. We're going to re-rack that today in the 5 o'clock hour if you missed it.
I tell you what, I got a few DMs from Big 12 brethren that I have not heard from in quite some time. Had a reporter in West Virginia reached out like, hey, man, what are you hearing? Had a reporter from Iowa State who I probably haven't talked to in 4 years. He reached out. People want to get everybody on each other's shows and talk about it from these 8 schools. It's interesting times, and yeah, I do get the sense that there's some of that, like, hey, let's stick together and kind of, fight these hard times out together. But I also get the sense that the moment someone who's up the right alley calls with the right offer and the right location and the right situation, that, you know, that togetherness could fall apart very quickly. So, man, what a tightrope everybody's walking right now. A lot of nervous energy, but it's fascinating to discuss, and I'm glad a lot of people have joined us along the way, because we're all just college football fans at the end of the day.
There have been teams in this state, programs, Rice left out, Houston left out, TCU initially, remember, was left out of the Big 12, and they're bitter about that.
Been left out like twice.
Yeah, and Houston didn't join the Southwest Conference till the late 1970s, and then they were pretty damn good. But, yeah, Iowa State, Kansas State, you know, even bigger schools like Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, West Virginia. I like West Virginia. I love Huggins. I like Neil Brown. I like the Mountaineers. And I hope everybody, just as those who cover, because like someone said earlier today on the YouTube chat, well, if they're not a Power 5, do you guys just like stop existing? No, we don't change what we do. We go all in all the time, no matter what, if they're a part of the AAC or the Sun Belt or whatever. This is not the first time we've had to face this down. This is like the third time that we faced down what might happen to the team that we cover in Baylor. But as all of you have watched and listened and seen this week, we cover as many as we possibly can.
You just made me sad that there's a really good chance that it's going to be a long time before I ever get to go to a post-game press conference that starts like, Baylor played really well, and Mark Vital is a great player.
You've lost Stoops to retirement and Huggins now to realignment.
I know,
maybe, right?
Yeah, I don't get. What was going on? What's going on in the fourth quarter? We're getting beat.
Frank Martin is also someone we enjoyed when he was at Kansas State.
Yeah, South Carolina, great press conference. 407. Enjoy it, UT, no you.
407. Hello, gentlemen. Great work. Thank you. What about the idea of the Pac-10 packing off with North Carolina? I've seen that. Of course, I've seen 100 different scenarios, but North Carolina, to me, man, that's about as much ACC as you can possibly get.
You read that
Big
wrong.
10.
Big Ten. I was like, what? The Pac-10?
Yeah, the Big Ten.
The Big Ten packing up with North Carolina. I've seen that from a couple of actually reporters who cover the game. Man, I
don't know why you would do that if you're North Carolina, really. I mean, I understand there's a different kind of pull with the Big Ten, but you're fine where you are. Like, you've got Duke with you, you've got Wake Forest with you, you've got NC State with you, you've got powers like Miami, Clemson. I mean, North Carolina football's on the uprise right now with Mac Brown.
It's fine. It's true.
He didn't mention somebody.
He shouldn't have.
He shouldn't have. Having fun. You're right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just don't know why they would want to leave. But, I mean, if there's rumors out there, I mean, look, the last time realignment happened, we weren't expecting Rutgers to be a part of the conversation, and we weren't expecting – who else was involved back then? Rutgers, Maryland. Like, we weren't. I don't know how many people were expecting Maryland to be a major factor. So, maybe I just, without knowing enough of the details of why that would be of interest, I don't know why that would be of interest.
Well, and again, there's only a couple of seismic moves you can make. Everything else is just to fill out your roster. I mean, and this is no insult to any of the other schools, but for the Pac-12, adding 4 teams from the Big 12 isn't seismic. The seismic thing already happened. That's the aftershock. And for the Big Ten, when they expanded and they added Maryland and Rutgers, I mean, that wasn't really, knocking people out. Like, oh my God, I mean, they haven't done anything in the Big Ten. It was better for them financially, but that was just about footprint and where they could go. And the ACC has since added, the ACC added Pittsburgh and Syracuse and, schools like that. And nobody really cared. It was just, poaching the basketball conferences essentially. And what's changed for that? The big thing happened. Texas and OU going to the SEC. There's a few brands that would make that happen, and it's happened. All the brands are secure in a place eventually.
How about this question? And I think the answer is yes. But do you think the SEC will actually stop at 16?
Yes, I do. I don't know who else would be desirable enough regionally to jump in the. I mean, look, I won't put anything past the SEC because nobody knew that they were secretly poaching Oklahoma and Texas this entire time. So yeah, maybe that's in the works. I mean, maybe they have dreams of being the mini NFL, which they're kind of already getting close to. I don't know about people out there, but I already see the NFL. I see it on Sundays. I see it on Mondays. I see it on Thursdays. I'm starting to see shades of it on Saturdays, and that really doesn't interest me that much. So to grow even larger, I mean, if you start, like 16, I think is like the cutoff of being an actual you start going to 18, that's a league. Like that's a full-blown like corporation almost. If you start getting 20 teams, I mean, that's a whole nother entity now.
It's the Big East in basketball, the way it was, yeah.
Yeah, now I could see if the goal is ultimately to break from the NCAA, which people are mentioning but not really factoring into this, if the goal is, and that's been what most athletic directors have been alluding to, you just completely break off, then yeah, I could see you maybe add some more teams. Like who that would be, I don't know, unless you're just, like I said, trying to make a mini NFL, but I think that would just kill off the sport entirely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what appeal that would have outside of, being a fan of those particular schools, and it would certainly diminish, the rest of the college football landscape. But again, we're also talking about programs who clearly don't care about what everybody else is going to have to deal with so long as they get what they want. So, yeah, maybe. But it's kind of hard to see that right now. I wouldn't put it past anybody, though.
There's one thing for sure. Don't say never. Or don't say it won't ever happen. And, Paul, you were not – it's not like breaking news, but you were ahead of the curve a long time ago. We've been hosting a show together since 2010, and I know you regret every second. But you, from the beginning, said no matter how this all works out, this is when the realignment first, Nebraska, Colorado. Then it was A&M and Missouri, among others. 4 16-team conferences to equal 64, which is perfect. That used to be the number for the NCAA men's tournament. That's what you've said for a decade or so. That, again, not the first one to say it, but you've been committed to that, and that is now, here's the first one.
Yeah. Basically, right now, there should be a mad dash to make sure you're not team number 65. Because that's like, right now, because of Notre Dame, and only because of Notre Dame, there are 65 teams. Now, there's some conference that could go, you know what, 17's fine. We'll figure it out because of Notre Dame. But Notre Dame, and because of their inclusion in the ACC and everything else, makes it impossible for it to be perfectly 16 if you want everybody who's a Power 5 now to remain that.
I still always do understand. I know they have a pretty good history. And I still don't quite understand why Brigham Young, and it might be they don't want to do it, but I still don't understand why they're never involved in the conversation. They're always involved in the conversation, but they're never accepted.
I think, part of it is, look, the Mormon religion is huge and fast growing.
So is Notre Dame's religion.
Irish Catholics and Mormons have something in common, and it's they don't like to use they don't like to use something that can prevent birth. But they grow rapidly, and the joke about Notre Dame is they've got a recruiter in every town, and the Mormons would like to have that. They kind of would like to have that same thing, but they also envision themselves very similarly in that they can be independent. They have they have BYU TV, so they can put all their sports on it. They have all these other things, and they can, because of the way the Mormon community works, really operate independently of everyone else and feel fine with the amount of money they have, because there's not like, Notre Dame, there's 100 Catholic schools. They're the biggest Catholic school, but there's hundreds of Catholic schools. There's not hundreds of Mormon schools. There's BYU, and there's probably a couple others I don't know about, but BYU is the Mormon school. So they have a built-in economy unto themselves. And I'll tell you, and the Pac-12 makes a lot of sense for them because of where they're located, and their big rival is Utah. But if the Pac-12 wasn't willing to deal with the Baptists being too conservatives, the Mormons are even further along than that is in a lot of their religious beliefs. So,
here's a 254. I just responded to that. Daniel, Brigham Young, Navy, Army are all independent. Could it be 68 and not 64? Navy and Army are not a part of that discussion. I love them. I'd love to see them as a part of the conference, but they're not a part of that discussion. Right. And the 979, I know you. Hi, this is JD. I'm JD, living in College Station, ready to go to work tonight at A&M with a huge smile. All that talk, and now the Aggies are ticked off. Well, I will monitor the police scanner closely tonight because Northgate is going to be lit. JD, right. Thanks for that.
Grant appears to be from Minneapolis. He's that's where his number's from. Grant, you're on SicEm365 Radio. Thanks for your call. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, I'm going into my junior year at A&M, and I just think it's so hilarious. First of all, just with Texas and OU joining, because everyone knows Texas is so high and mighty. It's just been talking, was talking so much trash when we left. I remember I was, kind of young, but I knew what was going on back then. And I don't know, I think it's so funny that I just see Texas people on the internet acting like this has been the plan the whole time, and they're, just going to come in and run this whole show. And I really hope that Texas goes like 5-7 their first year. And I hope they end up joining my senior year, and I hope the game is in College Station, although I assume it would be in Austin because the last game was in College Station. But I really hope this ends up backfiring on them, and they just don't end up recruiting like they think they're going to, and they don't end up running the show like I think Texas at least thinks it'll end up doing. But I don't know. I just this whole thing has happened so fast.
Yep. Frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of exciting. I mean, at least like A&M it's gonna hurt a little bit, but I mean, it's the Kansas States and the Iowa States, and I mean Baylor to an extent, that are really going to end up getting shafted by this.
Hey, thanks for the call. Good luck. Enjoy whatever you have time left in college, because there's nothing like it. And I hope you get that degree and move on and have a great career with whatever you do.
But to your point, I mean, that is something that I think probably a lot of people are hoping and wishing for now. And I do sense there's a lot more anger directed towards Texas than there is Oklahoma, which is interesting. But I think that's kind of maybe the perception of those schools, is that Texas is not even so much, but partially the ringleader, so to speak, but also they're just the more devious, I think, is probably what most people are thinking. But again, to your point about them struggling potentially, that's a possibility. I mean, that's something we were talking about yesterday. You know, if you're 7-5, 8-4 every year in the Big 12, I don't know how you think you're going into the SEC, no matter how great Sarkisian may be or what, and not, taking a couple of lumps early on. Maybe they're strapped up, ready to go right away. I know A&M wasn't. I know Colorado wasn't. I mean, Missouri had early success, but they had already had their best success at the Big 12, and it just transitioned over with a really good team and coaches and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some stumbling blocks, and it's just going to be interesting to see how long it takes to clear those out of the way. Can Texas or Oklahoma, for that matter, out of the gates, remain teams that, in Oklahoma's case, wins 10 games year in and year out? Or does 8 become kind of the new average? If you're Texas and you've been winning, let's say 7 or 8 every year, does just getting bowl eligible initially, is that a challenge for you? That's what's, I mean, there's so many fascinating aspects of this entire story, but how those two transition into those leagues and the success they either find or don't early, and then if they don't, how long it takes them to find that. That's going to be really interesting, because Texas fans are like, yeah, we know we might take a few lumps more every year. And I think I've seen Oklahoma fans to a lesser extent, but it's okay because we're going to be making money. And it's okay because we're going to go to College Station. And it's okay because we're going to have the Arkansas rivalry. And it's okay for all these reasons. And you say that, and I get that. And again, that money's not yours, so I don't know why people parade that like that. But we hear that now. 3 years from now, if you're going 6-6 year in and year out, you're fighting to make a bowl game, that money's still great, but are you going to really enjoy that as much as you probably thought? Because winning at the end of the day is all that matters.
You know what? Yeah,
that's
you're right.
All that matters.
And as a Nebraska fan, lifelong, you're exactly right. No matter how much $50 million a year they get, I'm sick of the losing. I'm sick of so much.
Exactly right.
It's good that they can cover their losses.
And how much of that $50 million did you get? None. So what do you care?
They get some of mine, because I'll sit there and get online if I can't. It is about the money. It's about all of that, the prestige. But for a fan, and fans, I see a lot of fans. We make more money. We bring in more revenue. It doesn't go to you, man. You're paying them even more money on top of that. It's about winning and losing, and I'm sick of losing as far as my favorite team. But that's been a long time. I've gotten numb to it.
So I'll pass along this quote. This is from Orange Bloods. Asked a high-level Texas source last night about what might happen to the other Big 12 schools with Texas and OU headed to the SEC. The response, quote, ultimately, we don't really care.
Oh, at least they said it.
Well, least shocking response ever. And how the other schools got tricked into believing they ever did, I will never know, because it was pretty easy to see that, certain places are out for their own best interests always. And, if you got hoodwinked over this, then you're you just were not paying attention.
The greatest trick the devil pulled on the world was convincing everyone he didn't exist.
Exactly.
So, and that's kind of, and I hate to, I know they're not devils, but
is that not just and here's the thing, the fan base loves that. They like that when DeLoss Dodge said, we're the Joneses, or we'll be the ones that decide when we play A&M again. I guess, well, they have.
We could go, I would love to just do a whole, like a spoken history of Texas big-time comments that really ultimately make no sense.
Do a top 5. Nobody watches that, right?
Yeah, nobody watches. Or
the guy on the left, the one on the right.
But like just from DeLoss Dodds. Back in the day that created this, which was, they asked him about, the Longhorn Network and how people, A&M mad about it. He said, well, I noticed they have the 7-on-7 in College Station. You didn't want it, and every other state championship game is hosted on your campus.
Yeah, Texas relays. They have all that stuff.
Yeah.
When
7-on-7 became popular and it was in College Station, all of a sudden, wait a minute.
That was an issue.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Now, Colt sent along Oklahoma State's president or something. They sent out a statement. We're disappointed by the lack of engagement and transparency from our colleagues at OU over the past months on a matter with serious ramifications for our state. We have historically worked together to advance our state and address issues based on a partnership built on trust, and then went on to say, basically, we'll do what's best for Oklahoma State. We'll have further discussions. So, just a lot. It appears to just be a lot of acknowledgments of the situation today. With statements from Baylor, from Oklahoma State, from other places as well. Just the writing on the wall of this move inevitably happening. And then, as we've been discussing the last 2 hours, the ultimate moves made by those left behind. And as that Texas quote I just read a moment ago says, Sooners and Longhorns aren't worried about it. They've got their next spot. So, yep, the other 8 are left to their own devices.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, a lot of others are chiming in, and I say that in a positive way. To 280, we got to take a break. 208 just tuned in. So they're going to turn G5 teams into their own second-tier league, separating the Power 5 from the G5, same as FBS. FCS distinction is right now. What sayest thou?
I agree with you. I was just kind of talking about that a few minutes ago as far as if the grand plan was to balloon this up even more. When the Big 12 schools thought they were still a part of a Big 12 just a month or so ago, Mac Rhodes, Baylor AD, he said for over a year now that he feels there's a split coming. At the time, he thought they were probably going to be involved in that split on the good side of things. Now, that's a little murkier, and you wonder who all is playing. Clearly we know there's backdoor channels and communications going on, so what is going on that we don't know about? Like, if Texas and Oklahoma can talk to the SEC and negotiate a move over the last few months without anyone ever catching any wind of it, what other schools out there potentially attempting to do the same right now? You know what I mean? So, who the heck knows? But, it's wild.
A couple of notes on this academia. From the 225 guys I saw were a Pac-12 beat writer. Pac-12 members must be a Tier 1 research university. And again, that's above my head because I surely was never at a university that was that. That's why Brigham Young and Boise State are left out. Brigham Young as well because of the religious beliefs and compared to what Cal and also that means TCU, Baylor, and Kansas would not qualify as a Tier 1 research university. Now, Kansas apparently is that other part.
The American Association of Universities.
Yeah. And I said earlier that Nebraska was not one, and I was corrected by 2 or 3 Huskers fans. And good for you thank you for watching us as well, that apparently they are. And I don't know if that's an invite or you earn it. I don't know that, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to apply or whatever. But I do think that the conferences are going to have to maybe stop with some of that. You have to be this to be in this conference if they want to.
Yeah, that's my first thought is that you might, maybe lack some of your requirements, but Baylor is on track to be a Tier 1 in about 2 years, 3 years. That's something that since Linda Livingstone has taken over that they've really put a lot of work into. They just sent an update like a week ago on some of the progress that had been made. So, on paper right now, that would mean that they would not be invited the way things are currently to be in the Pac-12. But if you could give them the assurance that, like,
if you could get every school 4 years or 5 years to
And I believe if you gave them, let's say 5 years, for example, I believe that Baylor would be tier 1 by that point, I think. And
then maybe inspire the other ones to like, okay, what do we have to do? You know,
but they're on their way to that. I mean, I do know that for sure. So if you can give that assurance, maybe that works for you. Or maybe, like you said, the Pac-12 has to go, okay, maybe we loosen things just a little bit. This is a unique time, and I mean, are we really going to screw ourselves over the opportunity to add 4 teams and become a super conference ourselves because of a tier 1 designation that is not cemented right this very moment? I don't know. That's up to their officials.
Who now has become